What's up everyone, this is Scher talking, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'll be giving a review to the Romancing Festival Matriarch banner that brings the third version of Matriarch, the third version of Vassault, there's also the second version of Rukh, and the first version of Thorpe. Well, this banner is pretty good. I can say that it's one of the best recent ones. Matriarch has a buff for will, dexterity, charisma, and love, and this is super important for some formations in the future, and we barely have buffers in the game. It's super important if you want to clear hard content. Vassault is an AoE farmer that has some very interesting skills that also inherits from his past style. Rukh is a very powerful character in Rofa's level. Yeah, very powerful character, and Thorpe being a little more of a buffer and debuffer for Slash. He's not so unique as the other characters. Well, let's start talking about Matriarch, and she is the third style of her. We have leading the people now, and with a higher SCR compared to the past ones, considerably higher. She has the highest endurance compared to all other ones as well. Her dexterity is similar, agility is inferior, intelligence does not matter, her will is very similar as well, but inferior, and love and charisma on average. Well, this version of Matriarch has some similarities with the first and the second version combined. It's the only one with the 2 arrows for endurance, that's good so we can get more, and 1 arrow for STR. It's her central status, it's even the highest bonuses here. As for passives, the first one is called Leader Missions, that recovers HP by a very small effect, should be around 150, and also 1 BP. This is the same passive that we have with UDX Matriarch, and it was changed for global since it was not like that in JP. The second one is called Prosperous Glow, increases all surviving allies stun damage by 10%. Well, Saruin also has a similar passive, but for dark damage. We can also compare this to UDX, because UDX gives 5% to all damage types and reduces damage by 5% too. So UDX Matriarch may be better for boss fights, because defense is also good, and if you are farming you can fit a whole squad with some damage, Prosperous Glow would be better. It will buff all her attacks, because all of her attacks have some damage, at least all the ones that you can find in her SS styles. So 10% at all times for her. Then the last one is called Weak Tension, and this one gives her 15% at all times and 10% further when hitting a weak target. So what we have here is, well, 25% at all times and 35% when hitting weak targets. She'll probably be hitting weak targets when you are farming, but sometimes you are not farming, she'll be buffing most of the time, so does not matter too much. Well, the first skill is called Peon of Peace. This one has a 5 BP cost, and it will buff all surviving allies, dexterity, will, love, and charisma by medium effect, that is 30%. We can compare Peon of Peace to Peon of Victory from the first Matriarch. This is essentially the same thing but buffing different status. Peon of Victory is just so good and still is better because it buffs STR, Endurance, Agility, and Intelligence. Most of these status are offensive, with only Endurance not being offensive. And Agility is also something that will allow you to evade by increasing your evasion. Intelligence also helps you inflicting debuffs and also inflicting status ailments, useful in plenty of boss strategies. While this version of Matriarch will buff only one offensive status, being Dexterity. Dexterity helps, well, rapiers, bows, and also guns. There are plenty of good characters for these types, but it's the only offensive status here. Then we have Will. Will allow you to, well, reduce magical damage, and also reduce your chance of being debuffed or inflicted with status ailments. One interesting thing is that many times where you're facing a magical boss, it's also weak to pierce attacks. It's not always, but it's just like the game. In the game, magical characters that cast spells are usually weak to pierce. So this kind of makes sense. And then we also buff love and charisma. Those two status are used for heal. Well, charisma is also used to inflict charm, but increasing love increases the heal that you can give to someone, and charisma increases the value of the heal that you receive. So, well, there's something very interesting that I need to explain by showing a picture of a future formation. That is called Gamble. This formation here will increase love and charisma to everyone in the formation, and also decreases damage taken, and also reduces your order by a penalty. But this formation is good because increasing love and charisma by 50% to everyone in the squad will allow you to receive more healing, and the last effect of the formation gives everyone Minimal HP heal. That is just like her first passive. That heals around 150 when not buffed by the formation. When you get this formation, you'll be healing for around 200 or something. And by buffing your love and charisma further and further and using a formation like this one that already heals everyone by the end of the turn, you have very interesting defensive formations to use. Well, this is not as powerful as the first one, Peon of Victory, that's widely useful in most scenarios, but it's not to say that this Peon of Peace is not useful. I can say that 75% of the time you'll still be using the first Matriarch, while the remaining time, 25% of the boss challenges, you can use Peon of Peace instead. Because it opens different mechanics to survive, like you can also bring Mirza or Leon, their Steel Blade Light will start healing for 1,200 after some turns by buffing love and charisma, and other characters that can self-heal or heal the party, like Christmas Princess Rose, will heal for larger amounts of volley, increasing their volleys in fight. Characters like the latest Snowy and Ryu and also the Golden Ball that heal small volleys also by using attacks will heal better, allowing you to survive, since in this game LP heals will just run out after some time. You cannot heal with LP forever. Having different alternatives will help you, and in JP they didn't have Leon or Mirza Steel Blade Light that just allows you to keep healing forever as long as you have VP. So very good and a very powerful skill when used correctly. It makes Matriarch a must-have if you are planning to fight hard challenges in the future. Okay, the second skill is called Gleaming Way. This one is a deep power attack with both Pierce and Stun. Has fast, yeah, it has fast, and it deals critical damage to Undead and Demon. It's very good because when you look on the first Matriarch, she had a brandish attack that is also deep power, does not have fast, and it's at least 7 BP. It's a little too costly, but you could use this twice in a row. And now this Matriarch allows you to use Gleaming Way plenty of times in a row if you want it to be used, and she becomes very useful in Zui Coliseum, for example, because you just increase Ritual of Wisdom, place her in a formation where she will be using her attack on turn 1 and beyond, then she just keeps using a very powerful AoE attack that deals critical damage to Undead and Demon. She's not a mass damage dealer, deep power is still very low, but constant damage is good. It's a very good strategy that you can use when, well, facing multiple waves of enemies. In Wastelands event now it makes even more sense. Then we have the third skill, Ritual of Wisdom. It's a 10 BP skill that deals both Pierce and Stun to a single target, double S damage, 55 modifier, critical damage against Undead and Demon, and recovers all surviving allies BP by 1. This is super good because we barely have skills that increases BP in the game. She gets 4 BP by a turn, allowing her to use this attack very often. And well, let's compare the damage of this skill. We have it here. It has 55 modifier. When compared to the first Matriarch, Heaven's Dive, it's even higher because she also recovers 1 BP to herself. The damage is better while also having a better effect. You can also compare that Brandish has a 14 modifier, while Gleaming Way has 10, but does not make much difference because of the cheaper cost. And one last thing to say is that this attack is also her strongest single target nuke when comparing even to the future styles in JP. Now we do have plenty of inheritance options for Matriarch, like we can use a Global Axe S style that will be available in the event to inherit Piercing Slash. This one will buff her STR, and it's a 0 BP attack with both Slash and Pierce. So you can just use Ritual of Wisdom, then use Piercing Slash, and then Ritual of Wisdom again when you have VP available. There's also Acupuncture Plus that's essentially stronger than Ritual of Wisdom and debuffs STR by 30%. Does not rely on intelligence, it's a very powerful attack, but we do have older characters that have these skills, just like Minerva. Minerva has both Piercing Slash and Acupuncture Plus as well. So if you're on raid, maybe Acupuncture Plus will help you more, but depending if you want to increase BP, you can still use Ritual of Wisdom. Just different options. The last one is Big Wheels, and this is an AoE attack with a power 13 BP. This one is not so useful in my opinion, but it does help depending on the stage if you want to use Matriarch for damage in farming scenarios. Besides that, if you are facing a boss challenge, you would still prefer this version of Matriarch because it decreases damage as well. and then you can inherit either Peon of Victory or Peon of Peace. If you don't have UDX Matriarch, this one is the best one to carry Peon of Victory together with Peon of Peace too. So you have 2 buff skills to use, and then you can summon for UDX Matriarch in the future if you want when she gets a rerun. Well, this Matriarch will be triple S in our tier list because we don't have many buffers in the game and they change how we face boss challenges. Without buffing, we have to rely on some other stuff that are not so good anymore, like debuffing a boss sometimes is just not as easy since it will just use the 5 weaknesses to remove the debuff and start dealing more damage. So you can just buff yourself instead and survive. If you don't have many gems and you want to skip this banner, I can say that the wheel buff part can be replaced by characters like Halloween Princess White Rose, Nadard, and Nawal's Daughter. Still, this type of buff is just so unique that I do believe that it's something that you need to have for future content. And now it's time to talk about Rukh. This guy here is a surprise. He's pretty powerful, he's Rufus levels of damage, and he's an elephant, so a must-have. Well, War Elephant is the style that we can summon now, and it's better than all the other styles, of course. The first one is not in the game, it was replaced by the second. This one is on welfare, so you cannot get it right now, only on limited events. Well, War Elephant Rukh has very good status distribution. He does have 95 STR, that's okay, it's not very high, could be better, but his passives compensate. His endurance is 95 and will on 90%, so this guy here don't want to take damage, especially because of how he operates. His dexterity is on 71, it's pretty okay, and we'll get an update where STR will also take into account for accuracy. His agility is not so high, and we wish he had higher than this, but it's okay as well. His intelligence is not used with this style, unless you really want to debuff, but you need to inherit. And love and charisma are pretty bad. Well, Rukh has a lot of different damage passives, and it comes with some gimmick. The first one, Unyielding Tenacity, gives him 1 revive. When he gets killed, he will revive to 30% of his HP. It will only trigger once. Then when he's on critical HP, he gets 50% increase in damage, and also reduces all damage that he receives by 50% as well. This is pretty huge, but critical HP means you are on 20% HP or less. Then the second one is called Dire Amp Attack. Damage increases by 15% at all times. When it's not full HP, it will increase by 10% more, and damage will be reduced at all time by 10%. Then Decisive Battle gives him an increase to damage by 15%. When it's not on full HP, it increases by 10% more, and when it's on critical, it will increase again by 10%. But how many effects we have here? Actually, Rukh has 30% at all times, and then 50% when not on full HP, and then 110% when on critical. This is everything that he has, and also 10% decrease in damage at all times, and 60% decrease in damage at all times when on critical HP. Too many effects with a character, but you need to discuss the skill that makes this all possible and that makes Rukh a good attacker. So Hammer Roll is an 8 PP skill that has 2 attacks. The first one is an AoE blunt attack with B power, and well, if he attacks before all enemies, he will have 30% increase in damage. If someone attacks before, you will get 50% increase in damage. And after using Hammer Roll, he will just chase with heavy impact, but also takes 80% recoil damage before doing so. So Hammer Roll takes damage and calls for heavy impact. When he calls for Heavy Impact, 110% increase in damage will be activated. Heavy Impact is an attack that we got with Tatiana. The Global Axe Tatiana has Heavy Impact. And she was kinda designed similarly, she also needs to take damage to do more damage, but Heavy Impact was a delayed attack, so was not so useful most of the time, hard to use. Has the highest triple S modifier in the game. So, what Rukh does is just that removes the delay part since it's used as a chase, and has much more damage than Tatiana by having 110% increase in damage. So yeah, like I said, Rufus level of damage, but also Rufus level of penalty. After he uses Heavy Impact, he gets paralyzed by 2 turns, but this is not that bad. First, paralyzed for 2 turns, but it counts for the turn that you use it having impact, so you are only effective paralyzed by 1 turn. Turn 2. Turn 3, he's already okay. He can use even Hammer Roll again for the AoE damage, and then again using having impact. And he will always do 110% increase by using having impact, because he always takes himself back to critical even if you heal him. So the damage will be always amazing. So this combination is impressive. He is only blunt damage. Rufus is a character that does blunt and slash, but Rufus takes 3 turns to get back to his nuke, and well, Rukh only needs 2 more turns to get back. So you can compare that they were designed as very special characters, and Rukh will be used in many strategies. A character that can do so much damage will be used in farming, and he can also be used in boss fights. It takes a lot of utility if you buff his STR. The damage will increase a lot. He's a character that just gets better by buffing status instead of using something like Morale up. And by being able to nuke on turn 1 and on turn 3, depending on the boss fight, if you can manage to kill it with Rukh, it will be amazing. You can also wait for overdrive, and you have another nuke attack here called Nuke Cracker, that it's a 10 BP skill that also debuffs endurance by 40%. But this is depending on his intelligence, it may fail. So you should not care too much about the debuff part, and just see that it even is good enough by being a triple S attack with 64 modifier. And if you want to use him on a boss fight and wait for overdrive to use Hammer Roll and just use some other skills in the meantime, it also works. Just buff him, and when it's time, use Hammer Roll and the damage will be amazing. So one of the best damage dealers in the game is now an elephant with a club, and it's just so amazing. And last skill is Roll Beat Plus, and this is a 2 BP skill with C power 17 modifier, and you should ignore this on long fights because it's actually not so useful. You just save VP with him to use Hammer Roll or Nutcracker if you don't want to take recoil damage, and that's just that. You don't need more than that with Rukh. Any inheritance options are worse than the skills that he can already access. So Rukh is very good. He deserves a triple S grade in our tier list, although we'll have an update in the future that will diverge a little damage dealers from support units. He still has a very unique design for something that only he can do. It's an amazing character that you... So Rukh is very powerful, deserves a triple S grade in our tier list. Albeit in the future we will diverge a little damage dealers from support units in the triple S tier, he will stay for long periods of time. And in the future we will have challenges for specific weapons, and Rukh, being a club user, will help so much and allow you to just clear these events without, well, scratching your head too much. With that said, Rukh is the second best character of this banner, but he only loses to Matriarch because Matriarch is also very unique. Well, now it's time to talk about Vassault. We have 3 different SS styles of him. The first one was limited, the second one was welfare, and the third one is the current premium style of him. There is also an SS style that was given out in his event, and let's compare the status. The current one has, well, okay STR, does not matter. His endurance is higher than the past ones, his dexterity is very bad, his agility is higher than the past versions, his intelligence is higher as well, will is lower than the first one, and love and charisma are on average levels. This Vassault here is a farmer. He can be used in very specific boss stages, but he's more used for farming. This is something that we need to see right now. He has double arrows for agility and 1 arrow for intelligence, bonuses to both agility and intelligence when you compare him to his other premium style. It was buffs to intelligence and will. Okay, so we have Power Charge 3 as the first passive that gives him plus 3 VP on the start of battle. This is useful because of 2 things. Then we have Intelligence Well 4 on the start of a round. He gets a buff to his intelligence, that is 25% increase. It's pretty huge and will help him do more damage. Then Robust Tension gives him a 15% increase in damage, and when he's on full HP he gets 10% more. So 25% increased damage at all times, plus 3 VP on start of a battle, and intelligence boost on the start of a round. So yeah, made for farming. So for spells, we have Squall Plus, 5 VP for a D power 12 modifier spell that hits all enemies and critical against fire spirits. We don't have many fire spirits enemies, so this will not affect many. And the cost is a little high. We have Ice Javelins Plus, that's only 4 instead of 5. Then there's Diamond Dust Plus, that's 8 BP cost, B power 22 modifier, and it's an AoE code spell as well. You can use this twice in a row because of power charge, and this passives will help him do plenty of damage. And if he managed to finish one wave by himself, it's nice since you can just bring a third character to kill the last wave, and you can bring 3 trainees in a stage. And the last spell is called Thunder Hail, a 12 VP spell that deals both cold and lightning damage, a power 30 modifier. It's critical against Undead and Demon. 2 hits, and both hits will debuff the target's will by 15%, so giving him 30% debuff on turn 1. This can help you debuff enemies that have too high will, or can help you inflict some status ailments. May be more useful in some very specific challenges and events than romancing fights, but if a boss has very high will and you want to inflict something, he can help, but after that, he's not so useful for boss fights, so maybe you can find some alternatives. Well, he has a very good inheritance attack that comes from his premium style, called Torrential Storm. This attack here is fast and also cold damage, 25 modifier, a little higher than his second skill, Diamond Dust, not by much. So the bad thing is that he cannot follow up with any AoE if you use Torrential Storm on turn 1. You will not have enough PP. So most of the time you will prefer to use Diamond Dust Plus to at least attack twice in a row, but depending if you really need fast, you can use it on turn 1 now with Torrential Storm. There's also Shield as an inheritance option. This one is good because it debuffs Dexterity, so he will be able to debuff Dexterity and also debuff Will. 2 things, but he's still not the best character to bring to a boss fight. Power Charge and Intelligence Well are not so useful for bosses because it just disappears, and also Robust Tension depends on having full HP to get full volley. Vassault is strong, but there are plenty of cold damage dealers. He just stays a little higher because of being able to do 2 powerful attacks and deserves a double S grade in our tier list. And the last character is Thorpe. His name starts with Thor. He's a dwarven and he uses axes. This character is new, and his status are well distributed. He has very high STR, 106%, and 84 agility, pretty high as well, with bonuses for both. Also has very good endurance, average dexterity, and that's it. His will is pretty bad. Well, he has STR Surge 4 as a passive. When he lands on a weak attack, he gets an STR buff of 20%. Strange that he has 2 attack weak targets to get this, so he will always have to fight against enemies weak to slash. Then there's Soul of X, gives him 15% increase in damage, and will also decrease all damage received by medium, that is 10%, when he equips an axe. That is all the time. And then there is Fired Up 5 with 20% increase in damage. Nothing so special, we will not be wasting much time explaining this. So for skills we have Slash of Terror. This is a single target skill with power 15 modifier, not as strong but has 2 effects. One is buffs his STR by 30% and will try to debuff an enemy STR by 15. This attack is the same one that we can use with Butcher, as you can see it here, but Butcher had only 31% intelligence and Thorpe has 59, so it's not so bad. You can actually land this, it's just even higher than characters that we used in the past, were the buffers. Then the second skill is Savage Slash. This is a 6 PP attack that has fast. Yes, it's a fast attack. Deep power, AoE slash, and buffs everyone STR by 30%. So this can be interesting in auto setups where you can buff having fast will attack before your enemies and before your other characters as well, so that everyone that comes after him will do more damage, and he can use this twice in a row. So depending on the situations and the stages in raid, it will also help. It's similar to what Civ can do, but Civ is harder to just get back to buff again. You can use Thorpe, leave Savage Slash on 6 PP and increase Slash of Terror to 5, and he will always use Savage Slash all the time. This is kind of similar to another version of Civ as well that can do this similarly. This is the teacher version of Civ. This version here that can buff with Whale, but Whale is not full AoE, it's a row attack and it's 5 VP, but also buffs STR. In her case, Slash and Blunt, but being restricted to roll is not so helpful. So the good thing is that he can just stick using his Savage Slash and just help increasing damage. I see that he will be more useful in raids than some other things, but still pretty nice. Then the last skill is Dynamic Shot Plus. This is a 9 BP skill with 58 modifier. Well, it's not bad and gives critical damage to plant. Dynamic Shot was here in the game since the start, but it had a higher BP cost. When it became a plus version, it just decreased the BP cost. It's not bad. He doesn't have so many damage passives, but it's useful, especially for those that are starting the game. You'll get him right now. For inheritance, we do have some interesting things like Heat Slash that use slash and heat. It's kind of the same or close modifier, but it deals heat damage as well, but it will not buff himself or debuff. So it's just for those that want to use something with only 3 BP. Then there is Arc Slash Attack, that is a 3 BP AoE. This helps him so that he starts with Savage Slash 2 times and then stick to Arc Slash all the time. So he becomes an AoE machine. It's not bad, especially like I said for new players that lack some options. And Sweet Coliseum will also work well with him and other events with plenty of waves so that he just never stops using AoE. And the turn that he skips using Arc Slash, you will have enough BP on the next one to use Savage Slash. Easy to build. And the last inheritance is Calligraphy Cut. This one is a 7 BP skill that buffs his STR by medium, that is 35. I don't like this one too much since he cannot use this twice in a row, and he has access to buff the party, so buff the party instead of buffing just himself. But at least this one is single target, it's a more focused attack. Thorpe is not bad, he deserves top S tier or low double S tier, not so sure yet. And he's better on raids in long wave scenarios where you have like 10 stages or something like that, but there's nothing so special about Thorpe. I believe that if you get him, you can make good use, especially new players, but veterans can skip Thorpe easily if they get the other styles. Now back to the banner image. Is this banner worth summoning for? In my opinion, yes. This Matriarch here buffs different status, and we all know how good Matriarch is, and adding more utility is always important for hard challenges. There is also Rukh, one of the best damage dealers the game will have for a long time, and there is also Vassault and Thorpe, two very specific characters that work in different scenarios but are not bad. So I believe that if you get Matriarch and Rukh very early, you can stop. You don't need to follow Vassault and Thorpe if you want to save gems, but they are not bad at all. But the most important characters and the ones that I'm summoning here are Matriarch and Rukh. If I get them early, I'll stop and don't need the other two. With that said, that's my opinion. What is yours? Please say here in the comments. I want to hear you, and I will be live streaming the game as soon as it gets reset. And thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye.